Hey, today we will be looking at projectile motion. So you did some kinematics last year in grade 11, but now we're going to look at kinematics in 2 dimensions. So they'll have motion both in the x and y direction. And as we saw in the previous lessons, for vectors, we had to separate a single vector into its x and y components in order to solve. So some conditions under which we study. First of all, we will be ignoring air resistance. So we're going to ignore air resistance. Second one, we will only look at objects near the Earth's surface. So objects near the Earth's surface. The reason for this is that as you get further and further away from the Earth's surface, the gravitational field strength of the Earth becomes weaker and weaker and weaker. So at this point, we can only consider near the surface such that acceleration due to gravity we can consider as constant. And lastly, we will consider motion of the object after it has been projected. So what we mean by that is that we've already applied some impulse, during the acceleration part. Imagine like throwing a ball. When you're throwing a ball, you first have to accelerate the ball from rest, and then after you release it, the ball will then travel through the air. So we're only looking at the time from when the ball is released to the time the ball or the object hits some surface. So next, for projectile motion of an object, we separate the motion into 2 components, as we mentioned before. Separate into the horizontal and the vertical. So for this case, the only external force acting on a projectile is the force of gravity. So in real life, again, there's air resistance, and it's always opposing the direction of motion. But because we're only considering the simple case where there's only the force due to gravity, then we know there's only going to be acceleration in the y direction. In the x direction, the acceleration comes out to be 0 meters per second squared. So again, for y direction, 9.8 meters per second squared, or 9.81 meters per second squared, depending on how many sig figs you wish to have. And the key idea to remember is that because of what we just said above, that in the x direction, 0 meters per second squared, the acceleration, that means in the horizontal direction, horizontal motion, the motion is constant. In the y direction, because we have that 9.81 meters per second squared in the downwards direction, we know that vertical motion, the motion will change due to the force of gravity.